Hello there. How's it going, everybody? We're examining some NFL Cafe value for week 7. How's it going, Jason?
Doing well. Doing well. I'm not going to give a crazy voice like you just did, but doing
That was.
well.
What would you say that was? So I'll describe what I was going for after you.
It was like a drunk LO governor type
Close,
thing. Yeah.
close. Yeah, I pictured a guy with a long nose and like it points and then it goes down, and he's got like moles and like a hat, and he's got nose hairs coming out, a big white nose hairs. You know what I'm talking about? And he's
Yeah,
really frail. And he sits in a
I'm
corner
thinking like,
and he's eating an apple, and he only has 3 teeth.
see, I'm thinking of like the Wake Forest Demon Deacon
That's very close.
mascot.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's about
that's
right.
what I'm keying in on.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a worm in the apple, but he doesn't know yet. It's like on the other side, and he's yeah. Quarterback, Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Blake Bortles, all fairly reasonably priced. I guess, who do you like most out of this matchup, and sort of what are you looking at here?
The one I like the most is Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's the cheapest of the group in the best matchup against this Detroit secondary that's just been bad. I mean, we look at Case Keenum and put up 4 touchdowns last week. So
Oh,
they're allowing nearly 25 FanDuel points per game to quarterbacks this year. 7,300, a really nice price. There's a lot of cheap options you can pair him with, and I even think you can just fall away and just use him solo if you want. I like Bortles as a swerve because I do think Cousins is going to be a pretty chalky play this week, as he should be. But Bortles is interesting because he's been really unreliable. He's been in a couple good spots already this year, hasn't done much. But this is an Oakland secondary that looks really lost. They're allowing the 5th most FanDuel points per game to quarterbacks. I love using him with Allen Robinson. A lot of upside there. The floor, very low, though. So it's just a GPP play for me.
well, I will say, the Raiders are lost. You know who they should look to for some guidance?
Who?
Alex Jones.
He
He's got some great vitamins for them. If you want to go check out his site, he's got some great health vitamins that'll keep.
he feasts on the lost people for sure. Yeah.
Oh well, don't say that. I'm a subscriber. I really would like Alex Jones to investigate the Case Keenum bootleg touchdown that ended up being the Lions' first rushing touchdown given up of the year. Instead of giving it to Todd Gurley, your best player on the goal line, they decided to run it in with Case Keenum. I would like to interject and say I think something's going on there.
Something's in the water.
Something was off about that play, if you know what I mean. So keep your eye out on this Lions team this week, because we don't quite know what's going on there. You know what I'm saying?
I have no clue, but I do know about Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
7,900. I don't mind him. I mean, the one thing I do like, obviously, I think the touchdowns are going to be there. I'd like to see him throw for 300 yards. I think that'd be a nice eye-opening surprise for me, because it's been a lot of kind of, 220, couple touchdowns here and there, which isn't bad. I think he's a solid GPP play. I'm not going to really look for him in cash games. I think this Washington defense is going to eventually come around. There's way too much talent there to play like this consistently throughout the year. But I like him as a GPP swerve. I think out of the 3 here, Cousins is probably the safest bet. But the other 2 pretty intriguing swerves.
Certainly agree. On to running back. I just read a tweet, because I'm back on Twitter after what was an eerie Friday of being hacked. Not me personally, just the whole Northeast. No big deal. Spencer Ware, 7K. Jamal Charles, knee swelling could really shift, how we all think about Spencer Ware this week. He could go bananas, honestly.
So I'm looking at, you look at this and you go running back, let's look for some value. You're thinking James White, you're thinking Mike Gillislee, you're thinking Jacquizz Rodgers. These are guys that pop up, but James White 6,100's in here, but Spencer Ware at 7K is a really nice price tag against a New Orleans team that is horrendous against the run. So if Jamal Charles is just completely out of the game or barely in there, I still think Ware's going to get 15 plus touches anyway. He's obviously going to be in work for the goal line. So I think he's a fine option because you look at the total of the spread, it really does set up Ware for a big week. I think he's a logical running back SP2 in all formats.
I want Jamal Charles to play so I can play Ware now, and hopefully he'll steal away some ownership. But yeah, I think this is all systems go now. I had my reservations before this news, not totally against Ware. I thought he was a good play. This is sealing the deal though on honestly 20 touches. I believe. Especially how I think this game is going to go. Obviously, Drew Brees can do some amazing things, but generally speaking, out of 100 times, I think the majority of the time, you're going to be looking at quite a big workload for Spencer Ware. James White, you mentioned 6,100 catching touchdowns, catching a lot of passes. What do you think of him as a FanDuel play?
FanDuel is just GPP only because he does rely on those touchdowns. We talked about that on your pod. It's a little bit different on DK with the full point PPR. There really is a big difference. It's either like an 8-point outing or it's 15, which is reasonable for his price. And that all really falls on the touchdown. So if you can get it, great. I think he'll pay off that price tag pretty easily. But there's also a rather low floor, especially with running backs this week. On FanDuel, I think there's some different ways to go. I don't think White's a must play. I think DK is a much better play and closer to that. But I think in terms of GPPs with Mike Gillislee there, if McCoy sits out, Wichita Rogers, White may get some average ownership. I don't think it's going to be quite as high over here on FanDuel. So I still like him in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then, the last guy I really like here in tournaments, Devontae Freeman. What's your take on him at 7,500?
It's a really nice price. I mean, I think we're sitting in that mid-range in terms of running back this week. I think DeMarco Murray is probably the only one you really want to pay up for. I'm not really looking to use Bell a ton. A lot of those other guys are in tougher matchups. So I'm looking really at Freeman as kind of that piece below. Averaging 15 plus touches this year. San Diego hasn't really been great against the run. Obviously, I think they're going to be an improving run defense as the year goes on, but still allowing nearly 28 FanDuel points per game. And say you even split that with Coleman, I mean, that's still nearly 14 points apiece. And we know Freeman leads the touches just a little bit there when comparing the two.
Absolutely. I think generally speaking, that's a really nice range to go with, especially with some of these quarterbacks. It really opens up the wide receivers for you. What are you looking at in these value wide receivers? And I know there's a guy I'm really eyeing, kind of like angrily eyeing, because I know it's like, never mind. All right. Yeah.
We know who that is, and we'll save him for last because he ranks coming in last. But first one's Alan Hearns, who was on the injury report, not on it today as of Friday, so it looks like he's going to be good to go. In an Oakland matchup here, they rank 21st against wide receiver twos. He's been pretty quiet this year. Outside of that Indy game in London, he hasn't really done a ton. This whole passing game hasn't really done a ton, so I think this could be one where you can blow it out. 6K is pretty cheap. I mean, he's a guy who I think realistically can go for 6 for 80 in a touchdown. I can see that happening in this matchup, and I'm hoping the back and forth passing attack game flow really happens here for all these wideouts because I do like quite a few of them. So he's in play. I'm not rolling him in cash. I rather use Pierre Garcon, 6,100, who we talked about on your pod. Going to benefit from some injuries, and in terms of targets, they're going to be there again this week. But we get to Jeremy Maclin and 6,800. Great matchup. He's been in great matchups before this year, and we'll just gloss over his recent FanDuel point outcomes: 5.5, 10.3, 6.3, averaging just 0.28 fantasy points per route this season, which is not good at all. Great matchup. I'll have some exposure. I will, but I'm not getting ahead of myself. I've been down this Maclin one before. I'd rather be off of him than on him.
It just hurts so bad because it's not even that it's a bad play. It's just that the way the Chiefs offense works, like if the running game is going, they just don't have any need for the passing game. And, they really had a ton of red zone opportunities. They just ran them all in last week. I mean, I think it's going to be a similar game flow this week. That's what I'm looking at. So if I do believe that, I should be looking at Macklin in tournaments, but geez, I mean, it's really tough to trust him now. It really is. And it's not because of him. It's just the offense doesn't make sense for fantasy sometimes.
No, it's the thing. I mean, it's not the matchups. It's not Macklin as a player. It really is. It's in a situation where, you're plugging them into an offense that doesn't throw the ball. They don't throw the ball downfield. It's not a good fantasy situation. And it's weird because we've seen a couple of games where the Chiefs have been behind and it's still not working out for Macklin. So it's one of those things where, once again, I'd rather be off of it than on it. If it happens, it happens.
It is a good play though. Like, even though it more than likely won't pay off, I still think it's a good play. I don't, it's really weird. Like, he's really weird. Him and Kelsey, I don't know. Because they can both win their matchups, like, easily. And it only takes a few times to get those big plays from them. They're big play threats, but at the same time, it's tough to trust at this stage.
So, I mean, my question to you would be, I mean, using him with all the value out there,
Mm,
at running back, at tight end, is there a need to really lock him in at this point and take an
right.
unnecessary risk, which I'm fine with. It's probably just in terms of lineup construction. I don't think this week really opens up a lot for Macklin use.
Unless you go Gronk, because I think a lot of us
Yeah.
are going to be looking at Jack Doyle here, as you mentioned, in this group that we're going to be talking about. But yeah, I don't know how much of a need there is unless you pay up really high at quarterback or tight end. So let's get into it. Jack Doyle, 4,700. I'm digging that. Are you digging that?
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's funny that these three names came out because we talked about all three of them on the FanDuel tight end pod. So if you want more analysis there, you can go dive in. Jack Doyle is a cash game play for me this week at that price tag. I like him quite a bit. And as you mentioned, I think things shift, Gronk ownership a lot higher. It's going to be either Gronk or Doyle, I feel like, that people will kind of gravitate towards. In terms of the middle range, I like Hunter Henry. I think this game sets out well for him. I know you differ a little bit in terms of where San Diego's headed this week. You can see just kind of a flat out Atlanta blows them out of the doors there at home.
I mean, I do believe that. And, I'm going to be having more Jack Doyle than Hunter Henry. I can't deny it's a good play, though. I don't think we can rely on this touchdown production to continue, but Hunter Henry's getting enough production on his own in the receiving game to, have value on his own. So I'm okay with it,
He's on the teetering point of being too expensive. This is probably the last week we'll be able to use him.
Right. It's still a good enough value this week where I'm okay,
Yeah. And then looking at Gary Barnidge, I talked about him being a GPP play, especially if Terrell Pryor is out. Cody Kessler's just been good enough to kind of keep me afloat on using a couple of Browns guys in GPPs. Barnidge is always a guy who hasn't found the end zone yet. Gets that touchdown this week, though. That'll be huge. I see them kind of chasing this game from behind.
Yeah, Cody Kessler has surprisingly not been bad. Like, he hasn't been bad. Like, he's been, the 23rd best quarterback in the league so far. But that's good for what we expected of Cody Kessler, He's not making a ton of mistakes. He gets hurt every game, but
he hasn't been like Aaron Rodgers bad.
God, Jesus. Yes. Of course. You really know how to stick it to me, don't you? All right. Anyway, defense, pretty straightforward this week, I'd say. And I think you're with me. Vikings 49, Patriots 44, Bills 47. Line them up, shoot them down. Those are the ones I'm in on.
Yep, I think it's Minnesota pretty much across the board. Cash games. I think New England, if that 500 comes in to help somehow, you can do that. Bills is the swerve for me. I like them there against Miami. I think they match up really well. Pretty good run defense. Slot corner there with Roby. I mean, that's a tough matchup for Landry, so I think that matches up pretty well. It's a good secondary out there in Buffalo. I like it. I like these. These are the three I'm really on. I don't see myself using any other three. Minnesota's just been dominant. Now they get a rookie quarterback who, I think last 2 weeks they've looked a little bit off.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I mean, I think generally speaking, this is where I'm looking for value. I guess I'll give you my thought real quick. I think I love the values at running back and tight end and even quarterback. And I think you make your move at wide receiver. I think that's going to be the chalky way to do it, but I don't really care. Is
I
that where
think,
you're at too?
yeah, this week is completely flipped around for me. I think at the beginning of the week when I was just building kind of tentative lineups and messing around with some stuff, I was going pretty balanced. I wasn't using a ton of Julio Jones. I was kind of looking, to go a little bit balanced and use guys like Murray, Freeman a ton and Ware and kind of go at that running back spot and pay up a little bit. But as the week's gone on, I think you can shift away and you can use some Gronks, you can use some Jones, in combination lineups and pay down at the second running back spot. So there really is a ton of different ways to go this week. It's going to be a really interesting GPP kind of construction to kind of really be different because you're going to have to really try.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few contrarian ways to go, but overall, I mean, I think we're solidifying our values a little bit at this stage in the week. As always, if you want to check out this article, head over to dailyfantasycafe.com. Jason is writing a bunch of articles. This is one of them. So definitely check that out. Give us a like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. We enjoy those likes. I eat them like candy, or like the cookie dough that was in the fridge earlier today. You just take out a spoon and you just eat it, and you make sure no one's around because it's like, oh, I'm disgusting. And then, you have that moment where you're eating it and you're like, wow, I really am disgusting, but this is good. And then, you go and look for more stuff after you're done eating that. And then you come down and record podcasts. So, if that reminds you of yourself, then give us a like and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week.